was Christmas a few years ago, and I never thought the events that happened would ever happen to me. It was like something straight out of a horror film. I was in my freshman year at the time, and a Christmas pageant was coming up. The costume I wore was beautiful, though it wasn't one fit for Christmas weather due to how short it was. It was one of those dresses you might see a girl wearing at a bar, but I was still proud to be wearing it because I had the lead role. As the pageant went on, I noticed the man in the front row. He was eyeing me up and down. His eyes were kept on me, and he didn't dare to look at anyone else. He looked like a creep. One of those standard creeps who keep their beard and hair untrimmed and a bit shaggy looking. Luckily, I went home that night and nothing happened, or so I thought. Christmas was rapidly approaching, and I decided one day that I would go to the park and get some fresh air. When I arrived, the same creepy man was there, eyeing me up and down again, only this time he had puppies with him, and kids were playing with them. What a creep. He then approached me as I tried to walk away, but he made sure I wouldn't go anywhere. "Hey," he said, and I tried to bolt the other direction, but I felt something grip around my hand. His hand was latched onto mine. "Would you like a puppy?" He spoke again, this time gazing into my eyes. I shook my head, but I guess he didn't get the memo, as he led me to where all the puppies were. I couldn't run. He had a tight grip around my hand, and I wasn't strong enough to do anything about it. "I have cats at home. They would kill the dog," was my reply, and it was true. Hopefully, he would be letting me go, and he didn't. I decided not to visit the park for a while, and I still haven't to this day. Now, a week before Christmas, the same man approached my house, knocking on my door. I had no idea how he knew where I lived, but he did. And there he was. I didn't open the door and almost felt like calling the cops, but after a few moments of watching him through the peephole, he smiled and walked away. I was left shaken by the situation and confused about what to do next, so sadly, I did nothing. And interestingly enough, nothing else happened. I never saw the man again. Christmas Day finally came along, and on my way out to see some friends to exchange gifts, guess what was on my doorstep? A package. For me, addressed with my name on it and everything. Though that wasn't the scariest part of the unwanted gift, because inside the package was a puppy, dead and cold to the touch. I never found out how this man got my address in the first place, or my name, and it still haunts me to this day. So this happened a long time ago, when I was a kid. If you didn't know, Russia is filled to the brim with apartment housing, and we don't really have much space or privacy, so everyone knows everyone. We had two entrance doors. One was made of metal, and the other, behind it, was made of wood. A common thing for Russia in the early to mid 2000s, despite the fact that they were not really that safe. So basically, my family and I lived in a cement box behind two thin doors. This happened at night as I got up to go to the toilet, which was near the entrance, but at first I had to go through the living room where my parents were sleeping. That is why I didn't turn on the lights in order not to wake my mom and dad up. My path was passing through the flat in complete darkness, which I was afraid of in my childhood. When I got to the toilet door, I saw a silhouette of a man standing at the end of a corridor near our entrance/exit. I just stood completely frozen, looking at him, and I was sure that this person, whoever it was looking at me too. He was tall, but normal tall, about 190 centimeters or so, and wearing all black. And I couldn't see anything but his eyes staring at me. He kept silent. He wasn't moving or anything. I knew that this couldn't be any of our neighbors for sure because I had never seen a person corresponding to his height. I took one step back, still looking at him, and then ran to the living room to wake my dad up. He didn't really believe me about the man standing in our hallway doing literally nothing, but I insisted that he go and make this person leave or call the police. My dad got up to walk into the hallway and saw this man still standing there and yelled something like, "The fuck are you doing here?" Being a tough guy, my dad rushed the man and literally pushed him out of the apartment, although this man didn't really put up a fight. My dad came back in, locked the house up tight, and told me to go back to sleep. I still don't understand what his motive was because this person did not look like a regular burglar. Plus, standing in a hallway in the dark for anyone to stumble upon doing nothing, I'm sure isn't in the criminal's handbook. Maybe if I didn't get up, he would have just robbed our apartment and left. Who knows? Such situations are really not common in my country, especially when someone breaks into a flat full of people in the middle of the night. Something is off about this whole story, but I was completely awake and so was my dad. In the end, we don't really want to know what this person's true intentions actually were. So, creepy staring burglar, let's not meet. This all started last year when I bought my first house. It was a great deal for a piece of property in the area since it was located next to a party house. Strange people were in and out of it all the time, lots of screaming at each other late at night. Two times they knocked on my door to borrow my phone to call the paramedics. It was unpleasant, but most of them were polite and didn't bother me. All but one person, to be honest. This guy gave me weird vibes from the start. He cornered me one day when I was taking out the trash and introduced himself. I forgot his name almost immediately. I was in a hurry and didn't really want to talk. He started hounding me for my own name, which I gave reluctantly, not wanting to be a rude neighbor since I was going to be living there for a while. He then pressed me for my last name and who my parents were. None of this is particularly strange since we were both First Nations and it's common for people to know each other through familial ties. And I look really young. I'm often mistaken for a 16-year-old, and since he looked like he was in his 40s, I didn't think much of it. Just someone wanted to know if we're probably related or something. I started getting uncomfortable when he asked me if my parents were home. Now, I live alone with my dog, but I didn't want him to know that. So I said they were home. at their home, technically not a lie. He then asked me if I work and where I work. I told him I had to go and just carried on my way. He then asked me if I wanted to come party and motioned towards the seemingly empty party house. This was in the middle of the day, mind you. Super uncomfortable now. I ended up not answering and just going back into my house. A few times after that, he tried to talk to me again while taking out the garbage. And being the wimp, I would just go back in, pretending I didn't hear him. I wish that was it, but it's not. 2 months later, my root cellar flooded because a water line to the party house broke. My cellar is a rusty metal staircase down into a concrete hole with no other exits beyond the stairs which lead up to my front yard, typically covered with a heavy hatch that sits as part of my deck. I was in the middle of taking buckets of water out to the yard when, on one pass, I looked up to see him standing at the top of the stairs blocking my path. I was terrified. The cellar is soundproof because it's under my house and I was home alone. My dog was upstairs in my room, which I didn't have direct access to. I didn't have my phone because I didn't want it to get wet, so I felt completely screwed if this went sideways. He asked me what I was doing. I told him my cellar was flooded, and he took a step down the stairs. I stepped back and into the water, and he advanced after me. I told him it was okay, I have it handled, and that he needed to be careful because the water could be electrically charged, and that I was safe because I was wearing rubber boots. Thankfully, this made him stop, and he left without another word. It was a big fib because my power was off, but it was the only out I could think of at the time. I waited half a minute to make sure he was gone before booking it up the stairs and into my house. I borrowed a pump the next day from a family friend so I wouldn't be stuck in the cellar alone for extended periods of time again. He continued to try talking to me from time to time, but the water was shut off at the party house, so he was showing up less and less. Eventually, the building was evicted. Some people still wandered around the property from time to time, but never him. It was torn down some months later. Fall came, and there was a knock at my door. And yep, if you guessed the neighbor, you'd be right. He asked me if I remembered him. I told him I never saw him in my life. A look came across his face that I can't fully describe. It was a mix of confusion, anger, and sadness, to be honest. He stared at me hard. It felt like time was passing by so slowly, and I swear for as long as he looked into my eyes, he never blinked once. I started to get antsy, which I know he saw. So he told me to have a safe night with a forced smile on his face and left. I haven't seen him since, but whenever I hear a knock at my door, I always think that it might be him on the other side of it. So, my creepy ex neighbor, let's not meet again.